Ugh, a critical hit? Now I'm gonna lose. That's so unfair. No, pull yourself together. Put away the excuses and let's focus on getting better together. Bower Dad here, and welcome to Why Did I Lose, the video series where I seek to answer that very question. And no, it's not because they crit your Dynamax Pokemon. For this game, we'll discover that there are usually a few different ways to gain an advantage or keep the advantage you already have. When you capitalize on these opportunities early in the game, it makes for a much bigger difference. Come along and I'll show you what I mean. My opponent is going to open up with Zacian and Whimsicott to my Regieleki and Landorus. Now, immediately, we're off on a pretty good foot because we get Landorus's Intimidate in order to counteract the ability of Zacian's Intrepid Sword. So it has a regular attack stat, not higher, not lower. I toy around with the idea on the first turn of swapping into Kyogre, so that way I can get a free, fully accurate Thunder against the Zacian. However, when I go to switch, I think to myself, wait a minute, it would be a better idea just to put Incineroar in instead, which is the better idea. However, forgot to let Regieleki know the plan, so I attempted to do a regular accuracy Thunder against that slot anyway. Incineroar comes in, Zacian is at -1, Whimsicott does Tailwind. Zacian is going to Sacred Sword Regieleki. You'll see it take about 40% of his health, and that is significant. Zacian takes a huge Thunder, which is excellent. I decide that faking out Zacian is more or less free, but unfortunately this ends up being a mistake because we know at this point that Zacian cannot KO can't KO Regieleki with a second hit. However, fake out into the Zacian slot means that this switch happens for free, and now Whimsicott can do whatever it wants, which unfortunately in this case is KOing Regieleki, and that is going to make a big difference later on in the game. At this point, we're 2 turns in. I've lost Regieleki in exchange for almost KOing my opponent Zacian. It's what I would refer to as being slightly behind. Unfortunately, it's about to get much worse. I bring in my Landorus, and we are ready to go. We're ready to go. I decide to Snarl with Incineroar. This turns out to be a mistake. I will explain that here in a moment. I, at this moment, decide that it is time to Dynamax my Landorus, and I'm going to Max Rockfall the Charizard. Now, because of this, there's the switch to Zacian. Because of this, I know that my opponent's Charizard is going to be absolutely deleted from the game. Absolutely deleted. There's not really much of a purpose to Snarl, whereas if I did something like U-turn against the Whimsicott slot, now Zacian, I would have the opportunity to, 1, position my Kyogre to start doing damage, and get my Incineroar out of there to reposition later with Fake Out Pressure and another Intimidate. And there's the crit. Really huge bummer. No way around it. That just really, really dampens my chances of success. I will get the Rockfall, Crackback, KO this Charizard, which is excellent. But ultimately, the thing that I wanted to point out about this turn is that the Snarl with the Incineroar, which will pick up the KO, should have instead been a U-turn, both to get Incineroar out and to get Kyogre in. Now, I've knocked out my opponent's Gmax Charizard and their Zacian. However, the critical hit on my Landorus and the fact that I didn't reposition the Incineroar means I'm in a really sticky spot for this next couple of turns. This next segment of gameplay is going to go really fast because, quite frankly, Landorus and Incineroar here are both sitting ducks, especially with my opponent's Tailwind advantage. Incineroar can't really do anything before a Surging Strikes takes it out, and thanks to Gmax Wildfire, even if I were to guard with Landorus, it would still get KO'd by the Wildfire damage. So my opponent's Moonblast into Landorus is basically free. Surging Strikes into Incineroar will KO that as well. Now, a hard swap to Kyogre here would not have been the best. However, it would have guaranteed that I go into this next turn with 2 Pokemon remaining instead of 1, one of those being an Incineroar that is able to again fake out. One other point that I want to make here during these last turns when the game is basically over is that I decided to Ice Beam the Urshifu because I wanted to freeze it. And if you have an out, you should go for it, regardless of how ridiculous it is. But in this case, it doesn't work, and I lose. All right, what did we learn? On the second turn, I decided to fake out the Zacian. Because on the first turn, I got really good damage against the Zacian with Regieleki's Thunder. I had already stuck it with 2 Intimidates and it was almost KO'd. However, for all of these reasons, I also should have known that my opponent was highly motivated to switch out their Zacian. So instead what happened was, I faked out the switch-in Pokemon, which was Charizard, and I inadvertently threw Regieleki under the bus. What I should have done instead was fake out the Whimsicott. Not only would this have locked up my opponent's turn in the event of a switch, but if they kept Zacian in, it would have guaranteed that KO, and it would have ensured that my Regieleki survived. The second thing that I want to talk about is that next turn. I decided that I was going to max Rockfall the Charizard with my Landorus, which, as anyone who knows about the type chart knows, that is absolutely going to crater the Charizard. So the choice to Snarl with Incineroar is a little bit strange. It doesn't really serve a purpose. What I should have done instead was U-turn with Incineroar. It still would have picked up that KO against Zacian, and it also would have allowed me some valuable repositioning, so I could reuse the Fake Out, reuse the Intimidate, and so on. The third and final thing that I want to speak about is on the very next turn, Landorus and Incineroar are both basically dead meat. There's not much they can do. I lose them both for free on this turn, and there's the consideration that perhaps I should have hard swapped into Kyogre. Swap out the Incineroar, swap in the Kyogre, which would have left Kyogre a little bit battered. However, it would have prevented me from losing both of those Pokemon on that turn before the downward spiral. Now, looking at all 3 of these points on the screen right now, I want to bring up a very important idea that I alluded to at the beginning, and that's making solid gameplay decisions earlier in the game is always better. If you consider point 3 here, swapping out Incineroar for Kyogre, that decision would not have had to be made had I taken the advice on the second point. If I had U-turned with Incineroar, I'm already in that position and 3 is unnecessary. If we go further up the list, had I done Fake Out correctly on the second turn, I would have had an extra Pokemon. My opponent would have gotten a lot less ground out of their Whimsicott. Their Zacian may have already been fainted. Their Charizard might have taken some extra damage. One of those 2 things would have happened, and I wouldn't have been in such an awkward spot with my Incineroar in the first place. So all of this goes back to this idea that I'm presenting here, that earlier solid gameplay decisions are always better. The earlier in the game, the better they are. In just a minute, I've put together a teaser for episode 5 that I would like to show you. But for now, that concludes episode 4 of Why Did I Lose? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to keep up with my channel, there are indeed like and subscribe buttons for you to use. If you would like to watch some of my games live, I stream every Thursday evening at 8:30 p.m. Central Time over at Twitch on twitch.tv/BauerDad. Additionally, my Twitter is here at BauerDadVGC. You can keep up with stream updates, current happenings, and other ridiculous musings of mine. Thank you so much for watching, and now a preview of next week's episode. Okay, it's a Sun team with Tornogre. Last time I played against this team, I led Tornadus Landorus, and it was genuinely the most horrible idea. Oh, dual weather team. Interesting. So, oh, Origin Pulse. We're going to lose both of these here. Oh, Torkoal maxes. Oh, with the sun. Okay, Regieleki probably dies. This might be over.